is Terry Bradshaw, quarterback, Pittsburgh Steelers.
It's 7:15. There's a new home run champion of all time, and it's Henry Aaron.
This is baseball, Major League Baseball. And this is
ABC's Monday Night Baseball, live from Fenway Park in Boston, Massachusetts.
Looking. He's under the gun. He's tied. He throws. It is.
Hey, and welcome to another episode of the Past Our Prime podcast. Today we are happy to look back at one of the best teams of the 70s in college football, the Oklahoma Sooners, coached by Barry Switzer, who was on the cover of SI hugging his great running back Joe Washington, whom we had on the show last year. Gonna bring in my other two pals, and Bill and Mark. Washington last year, anything from that episode that stands out from when he was on talking about that 1974 national championship Oklahoma Sooners team?
Yeah, I liked when explained how he took the punt return. Was it the punt return back? How he jitterbugged to the right. And then and we have the video. I have the video when I put the little clip together, and you see him, and then how he hit the hole. Just the way he explained it. I can picture him talking about it. Really, really good explanation.
It was like one of the greatest punt returns in college football history.
Yeah. Mark, what do you remember most about Little Joe?
that his entertainment ability, that he could do impressions. And,
that's right.
And John Wayne, and what was the other one? I wasn't expecting that from him.
Yeah, he did Cosell, I think.
Cosell and Wayne.
Did he do Muhammad Ali? He might have.
I think he did.
Yeah. Wayne, and I think he did a little Elvis. Yeah, I mean, so this is perfect example of a guy that I couldn't track him down. He was kind of like, yeah, well, can we do it, Thursday at 4:15, and I can do it for 20 minutes, right? And I'm like, all right, and then we couldn't get him off the phone, and by the end, he's doing impersonations and stuff, and I just cracked up with these people because they make it seem like I'm not interested in doing this BS, and then we can't get him off the phone. It happens more often than not. It's hysterical, isn't it?
Yeah, because I know there's been a couple recently where they said, you can only do 20 minutes, and we're at 40 minutes, and we're like, well, keep going. Yeah. That's funny, because once these guys actually talk about the past, it becomes more clear to them how amazing the things they did and accomplished, and they just keep going. Yeah, but Scott, and Mark, remember Ron Say?
Yeah.
It was like an hour, and he was still going.
Yeah.
It's like, we got to go.
Yeah, there's a couple times where we've said, hey, thanks for joining us, blah, blah, blah. And then we'll keep talking after we've said goodbye to them, but they don't hang up.
No.
They just keep, and then the next thing they know, they chime in again.
Yep, he gave us like 2 or 3 more stories, and I'm thinking, damn, that was like an hour, 15 minutes of just Rod saying.
I always watch to make sure to see if the guest signs off or not, because the last thing you want to do is, what a jerk.
I know, exactly.
I'm not listening.
I didn't know he could speak English.
I remember Washington telling us just how dominant that team in 74 was. They would go on to win half of the national championship because they were on probation, so they weren't eligible in one of the polls. But in 1975, they are not on probation and looking to make it back-to-back titles. We'll talk with someone from that team in just a bit. Dean Blevins, a backup quarterback to Steve Davis on that team, knows a thing or two about Oklahoma football. We'll talk with the legendary sports broadcaster coming up. But first, Billy, the scorecard. We all have the same one, but you get to do it because you're our hockey guy, all right?
That's right. We will all pitch in on this one, but it's about Gordie Howe. He played a round of golf with President Ford. Now, on one hole, Howe conceded Ford a 2-foot putt. The president said, no way, then tapped the ball and missed. Chevy Chase would have been proud. He added the extra stroke to his score. Howe said, no, we're not counting that one. The president indicated the press corps and the Secret Service men who were watching the match. He said, maybe you're not, he said, but they are.
I think that's just a great story
I do
because
too.
if anyone's ever played golf in that thing, they know that 99.9% of the people, will give you the gimme. And
Yes. Just say
and
you're good.
and he was like, nope. And if I say that I made it, the next day in the papers, it's going to be like, President Ford cheats at golf or something. So he had to, as they said, he had to tell the whole truth, HOLE, the whole truth. So,
I always like Chevy Chase's impersonation of him falling down the stairs
uh,
everywhere.
I didn't know anything about, you know, politics or presidents then. The
Yeah.
only thing I knew about President Ford was apparently he was always falling off ladders.
Well, I feel it was over exaggerated.
It
He
was.
was
No, it
he,
was.
he was a football player at the University of Michigan.
We did a story on him, remember? There
Yeah.
was one of the
He
one of the
he
issues.
he was athletic, so all that falling stuff is, you have a
Oh, it
couple.
was hysterical.
It is because they had him walking down the plane and he fell over and we knew. I mean, I wasn't naive to that it was serious. I just thought it was funny.
Oh, I mean, I think at age 7, I thought, oh man, but I realized
Yeah.
that wasn't the case. I think he fell like one time, and then that was just
Yes.
Chevy just took that and ran with it.
Yes. But yeah, remember, I think I don't remember the issue, but I remember we did a whole thing because Ford was on the cover
He
talking
was.
about Michigan football.
Yep. And how he was a loyal subscriber to
He
Sports
was.
Illustrated.
Yeah, very much. Very
Yeah.
much.
They said it, Mark.
I got Robin Roberts, who was a famous pitcher with the Philadelphia Phillies. He disapproved of high pressure Little League. He said that baseball that age should be softball thrown underhand, where you can hit 15 times a game with no walks, no strikeouts, and the final score should be 42-38. I don't know if he's been to Little League games, but there are some Little League games that are 42-38, and they're not pitching underhand or whatever like that. But I get what his message was. A kid should have just fun. But
Yep.
Yeah.
we can't all get a ribbon.
That's those days are over. Kids stop having fun playing t-ball around age 9 now. Billy.
Okay, Gary Morangi. I think it's Morangi, might be Morangi. Buffalo Bills backup quarterback on Cincinnati Bengals rookie tackle Al Crevis, an old college teammate. He says Al is progressing fast. He holds like a veteran.
Didn't
Yes.
didn't have to learn how to do that. Just came natural.
Yes,
Well, they say that they could call holding on every play.
I've heard that too. I was listening to a guy give a stat the other day on Mark, what was the name? Martin of the Cowboys.
Zach Martin?
Yeah, he had 7 holding calls his entire career with the Cowboys.
Wow.
7.
He must have paid those referees real well.
Yeah, they said like 7 Pro Bowls and 7 holding calls.
And remember, that was that Jerry Jones wanted to draft
That's right.
the Texas A&M guy, Johnny Manziel.
That's right. That's
Everyone
right.
else telling him no, take Zach Martin.
Well, I'll tell you what, if he had Martin and Manziel, Martin would have had to hold a whole lot more
That's right. That's right.
than he did.
Yeah, that's a good point.
The A's go on relief. My Oakland A's are on their way to a 5th straight AL West title, and once again, not because of anything their owner Charles O. Finley is doing, at least not in terms of helping the roster he has assembled. Listen to this. He refuses to fly chartered flights and instead puts his team on commercial flights, which has led to some odd days, like flying the morning of a game from Oakland to Milwaukee. I mean, not talking about flying from Oakland to LA or San Diego, but Oakland to Milwaukee. So even if you're on a 7 a.m. flight, that's got to be about a 4-hour flight. That means it's 11 o'clock. It's a 2 or 3 hour time difference. I can't remember Milwaukee. You're talking about the earliest they're landing is like 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. That's just insane. If there's any delay, could you imagine being like, tonight's game has been canceled because the A's team playing is
It didn't even
stuck
get
in
there.
Denver. One time they arrived just 3 hours before a doubleheader was to start in an away city. So Sal Bando and Reggie Jackson both having down years by their standards, but the A's as a whole are still leading the division by a good margin. And if it weren't for their old ace, Catfish Hunter, they'd be leading by an even larger one. He has dominated the A's while wearing pinstripes. He's 4-0 against them in 36 innings. He's given up 16 hits and 3 runs. So, but they have replaced him. They have Vita Blue and Ken Holtzman leading the staff, and a bullpen that has 3 guys that would end up throwing 374 innings between them. Raleigh Fingers, Jim Todd, and Paul Lindblad. So basically they were like, what did you keep saying, Billy? It was Tanana and Ryan and a lot of crying.
That's it.
So
That's
for
it.
it was Holtzman and Blue and the 3 guys in the bullpen all through, I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, here's what's real interesting, okay, and how the game has changed. So Fingers, Lindblad, and Todd, they combined to win 34 games, okay? And then they combined to save, and I'm doing my math as I'm talking, 35 games. 34 wins, 35 saves. That's 69 victories they had a hand in,
yeah,
these 3 bullpen guys. And
yeah.
I mean, Fingers had 17 wins and 16 saves. Now, if Fingers was pitching today, that wouldn't be the case. He'd have maybe 7 wins and more like 30 saves or something like that. But
Yeah,
you know,
40
they
even.
use they use the bullpen differently.
Yep. Yeah, now, these guys are all pretty much for the most part. The elite relief pitchers go about an inning.
Yeah.
I swear, I wonder if you'll ever see. Have you guys seen what Bubba Chandler's done his first 2
Oh
times?
my God, his first, 8 innings.
Right,
He's
two
4 innings
two
each
four
time.
inning stints,
Yep.
and I'm
Yep.
like, God, what a weapon that would be.
Yep.
Twice a week or 3 times a week, even
Yep.
he comes in and goes 3 or 4 innings.
Yep.
That would be awesome.
And he appears to know how to pitch, and that's key.
Yeah. A place on the sun for 2 stars. The WFL's Southern California Suns are 4-1, being led by a couple of rookies out of USC. QB Pat Hayden, always thought to be too small to be a quarterback. That was always the rap on him at USC. And with the Rams, he was just too small. But in the WFL, he's leading the league after 5 games at quarterback. As for Anthony Davis, he's doing just fine, thank you. But get this, Hayden's season is almost over despite the team's success, not because of an injury, but what, Billy?
Well, he's putting education first, and so he's heading to Oxford because he's a Rhodes Scholar. He says, after Oxford, I'll sit down and think what I want to do with my life. Pat Hayden is as we've seen, is a announcer with Notre Dame telecasts, and also being the athletic director at USC, is a smart man, a very smart man.
Which is probably why he was such a good quarterback being undersized, because he can mentally process the game.
And I swear to God, it was always like, when you would hear him, Pat Hayden, he's a Rhodes Scholar.
Yep, that's right. They led with it. Did you know there's only been 2 other Rhodes Scholars in NFL history? Myron Rolle, safety for the Titans, played in our era. He's now a neurosurgeon.
Wow.
And this one, Byron Whizzer White. What was he? He was a former Supreme Court justice.
Right.
I just don't, I mean, I understand, I mean, it's weird to think though, because when I think of guys playing football, I think how fortunate they are. They'll never leave. They'll never quit. But Pat Hayden had made that decision that, no, I'll play 3 more games and then I'm done. And that's what he did.
But his football
there's
career
only
wasn't
been
done.
3 of them, and that's pretty. Those 3 have all done pretty freaking well.
Yeah, I remember with Myron Rolle when he was with the Titans, he had said, I'm gonna retire soon. I want to go back. I want to be a doctor. And people said, well, you can still play. And he said, no, I'm good. I did enough. And now you become not just a doctor, you become specialized. You're a neurosurgeon. That is unbelievable.
Well, and guys like that, or so many of them, they just wanna get to the NFL and just kind of prove to themselves that I could do it.
They did it.
I could do this. But I have a different calling. More power to them. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And Mark, in that game against Philly, Anthony Davis did a little bit of everything.
He sure did. So our former guest here on Past Our Prime, Anthony Davis, had quite a start to that game. So on the first two times he touched the ball were electrifying touchdowns. He threw a pass left-handed for a 51-yard touchdown, and then he returned a punt 84 yards for a touchdown. The first two times he touched the ball, and you would think it'd be running, like he'd be running for a touchdown or catching the ball out of the backfield, but to throw a touchdown and then return a punt for a touchdown. That pretty remarkable. And they won that game 58-39. There's a high scoring affair for you.
Yeah.
And wasn't Anthony
Yeah.
Davis the guy that wasn't that big?
Yeah, he wasn't
Yes.
that big.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That
And
was
the Southern California Suns had that really interesting uniforms where it's like orange and magenta, just a weird combination of colors.
Did you say magenta?
Magenta.
That's Callie's. No, that's Callie's favorite color, man. She says magenta like 9 times a day.
It's
She
like a
loves
pink
blue jeans.
purple, right?
Yeah, it's something like that. Everything's magenta, so I should get her one of those little uniforms.
You should find a Southern California
Yeah,
Sun.
it's
Yeah.
just loves that color.
That's too bad. Davis, you people forget, and we were reminded when we had him on, in that Notre Dame game called the comeback, it starts with him taking back a kick. I mean, he was a phenomenal kick
right.
returner.
Oh yeah.
Really odd that a guy could have that great of a college career, forego the NFL to go to the WFL. I think he ends up leading the league in rushing either this year this year I think he does. And then, I mean, he just didn't really get a real shot, I don't think, in the NFL, but very strange.
And also, you mentioned this earlier at the beginning of the show. Anthony Davis is another one of those guys for our interviews that sort of seem like he's got to get off quickly, and we talked to him for a long time.
Yeah.
Well, so much so that we did 2 shows with him.
Yes. Because I remember Mark got him and they had his handler there. And it was almost like, well, Anthony, what are you going to ask him? He's going to get out of here quickly. And then we had him for whatever, an hour plus.
Yeah. Because he
Well, they
did
actually
want-
set him up at a place, I think, where they were going to do, I don't know, it was his office, I think. And they gave us a whole series of questions we could ask him and stuff like that. So they
Yeah.
go kind of out of their way.
Yeah, but they like he did not really want to talk about his time in the NFL and stuff like that because at one
And
point
then
I
he
forget,
did.
someone asked one of us and he goes, "Oh, you guys want to talk about that? All right, I'll talk about that."
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny when they do that.
Great
It's just so
stuff.
funny.
Great stuff.
But getting back to the Southern California Sun when Davis was with them, the time this article comes out, they're 4-1 and in first place in the West, and they would finish 7-5 in first place, but they wouldn't win any championships because the league folded on October 22nd.
Yeah.
So we're only going to get a couple more months of this WFL. It's very sad.
It's about to. I mean, they've been teetering for a while, but still probably was kind of shocking back then.
And Bill, did you make a discovery of a quarterback on their roster who I had no idea was on the Sun? I always thought of him as a Raider.
Yeah, Daryl LaMonica. Only thing I knew about Daryl LaMonica. Scott may know more about him. I didn't follow the Raiders that closely, but he's on that team, and I didn't realize he apparently hated John Madden. Madden's record at Oakland was 59-18-7. That's as a head coach. But LaMonica says Madden still ought to be an assistant. And then he comes back and says he believes the Raiders would have beaten Pittsburgh and gone to the Super Bowl if Oakland coach Madden had stayed in the hotel instead of showing up at the game. I mean, boy,
Right.
what's the backstory on that?
Right.
Did you know anything about that, Scott?
None. I mean, it's got to be some of the backstory's got to be that Madden finally pulled the plug and went with a guy
Yeah.
like Stabler
Yeah.
as his quarterback, and that probably didn't go over too well. But yeah, John Madden's career coaching record in the regular season with the Oakland Raiders was 103 wins, 32 losses, 7 ties, a winning percentage of 763. He's the fastest coach to 100 career wins. And holds the highest regular season winning percentage in the modern era for coaches with wins over 100. So,
Yeah, stay as an assistant.
yeah, the Mad Bomber didn't like him, but I don't know if he really has a case. Madden was a pretty successful coach.
Is LaMonica still alive?
I believe he is. It's a good question.
He wore number 3 with the Raiders. I remember him, and he'd throw those long bombs.
Yep. Yep.
He was a great deep ball threat.
Look who's up and about. This is the cover story of this week's Sports Illustrated preview of the college football season. Oklahoma on the cover with Barry Switzer. He's giving our boy Joe Washington a hug. There's a shot of their quarterback, Steve Davis. It's a preview, like I said, and SI is focusing on reduced roster sizes. Alabama head coach Bear Bryant sued the NCAA about scholarships, which were down from 105 per team to 95. They're talking about college football making money, what programs might not continue. For the first 15 pages of this preview, they're talking about everything but football. And I remember that kind of stuff as a kid. I didn't care about any of the business stuff of
No.
sports. I
Yeah.
wanted to know who was running the ball, who was catching the ball, all that kind of stuff. So finally, we get out of that stuff. And what do we get to? The Ivy Leagues, a big article on the resurgence of Brown. So I get it. Back then there was some, national interest in how the Ivy League teams were doing, not as much anymore. Finally, we get to the meat and potatoes, the preseason number one, and of course, it's the team with the 29 game unbeaten streak. The guys on the cover, the Sooners of Oklahoma. Barry Switzer's teams are 21 0-1 in his 2 seasons as head coach. Joe Washington is back, Heisman Trophy favorite. But Mark, they have just an amazing group of running backs.
Oh my God. They've got, first of all, our prior guest, Joe Washington, Elvis Peacock. They've got a freshman who actually that year only ran for 95 yards, but would end up having an incredible career, and then a future in the NFL, Billy Sims. But they had all these, and the interesting thing, because they had so many running backs, you would think they'd have a 1,000 yard rusher, but they didn't. Washington rushed for, I think, 871 yards, and Peacock only 322, and the quarterback Steve Davis, I think, had 512 yards. And there was another running back who ran for about 649 yards. Really spread around the running attack.
Billy Sims. I think Barry
I
Sanders
liked him.
kind of dwarfed Billy Sims, rightfully so, and he had a catastrophic knee injury that basically ended his pro career. But Billy Sims was looking at a Hall of Fame career as a running back. He was sensational with the Lions for a few years, and here in Oklahoma, he won the Heisman, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
I think in like 78 or something like that, he won the Heisman. So, Bill, their quarterback's a bit underrated. Tell me about Steve Davis, who runs this thing.
Well, Steve Davis, he passed for a little over 1,200 yards and 20 touchdowns in the last year, or in 1974. He had never quarterbacked a losing game. And by the end of his time with the Sooners, he had only lost one game and tied another. He finished 32 1-1 as a starting quarterback and two national championships. Just, I mean, an amazing, because you think of Oklahoma quarterbacks. We know about, what is it, Baker Mayfield. We know about Kyler Murray. We know about Jason White, who led them to a title. But Steve Davis might be the best one of them all. He didn't win the Heisman, but he was. I mean, if you just look at that, his 956 percentage as a quarterback, just an amazing quarterback. And sadly, you heard about how he died.
Yeah,
You guys know that?
yeah,
He
yep.
was
Now, how do you
he was flying a plane that he had never flown. He was in a plane that he had never flown, and the pilot let him fly the plane. And when they were going into land, for some unknown reason, he inadvertently shut the engines off. And so the pilot couldn't get the engine started, so they crashed in Indiana. But I mean, what an amazing, a sad ending, but an amazing player in his 4 years at Oklahoma.
Yeah. Yeah, just 60 years old when he died about
Yeah.
say like 10, 12 years ago, something like that. But
Sorry, I brought that down.
yeah, thanks, Mark.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. You're supposed to be the death guy.
Hey.
No, what terrible.
Well,
Uh,
hey, yeah,
I
I'm the
know.
death
See,
guy.
I
You know
screwed
when you
it.
were talking about Monica? You know when you were talking
Yeah.
about Daryl LaMonica? He's dead.
Oh my
Died
God,
in
is he?
2022. Yeah, died in 2022.
Wow.
there you
So
go.
I should never. I'll never mention death. Death and
I'm
nakedness. I'm
I'm
out.
the angel of death. What can I say?
Yes. But no, you could no one when they talk about Oklahoma quarterbacks, you never hear Steve Davis.
No, I remember even a kid. Remember J.C. Watts?
No,
J.C.
vaguely.
Watts was probably like in the 1980 range, something
Okay,
like
yeah,
that. But these were wishbone offenses.
yeah.
They didn't throw the ball all that often, but when they did, Davis was highly effective. The other thing I want to talk about real quick is, he kind of has this. I don't know why, but he has a reputation of not being a serious football guy. But Barry Switzer's coaching record at Oklahoma is unbelievable. I mean, one of the reasons people hated Barry Switzer or Tom Osborne or any of those guys is they just never lost. They were so dominant.
Yeah.
And he goes in and think of that. He wins the national championship his first 2 years or
Yep.
I think maybe his second and third year. But I mean, his time at Oklahoma was spectacular.
Did you guys watch the Cowboys thing, America's team?
I have not yet. No.
Because
Documentary?
Troy Aikman talks about that. He said the Switzer that came to the Cowboys, he said, when I went to Oklahoma, he said Barry Switzer had his hand in everything. Everything went through him, and he knew everything and was in charge. And he goes, then he got to the Cowboys, and that wasn't the same coach. And all of
Right.
a sudden now he was a little bit more laid back. And I'm not saying he still won a Super Bowl, but I'm saying we knew, and what you're just saying, his amazing ability at Oklahoma was because of the fact that he knew so much about football and he was such a big part of the defense, offense, special teams.
Interesting.
What's so interesting though about Oklahoma? They were the best team that you could never watch because even though they were off probation, they still had the TV ban.
Oh, wow.
So none of their games could be televised, but they could play in a bowl game that year.
Dean Blevins was a backup quarterback to Steve Davis on that Sooners team and the top scholar athlete at OU in 1975. He's no dummy, that's for sure. And when he graduated and his playing days were over, a career in sports TV beckoned. 41 years he's been in front of the camera covering Oklahoma sports, the last 28 at Oklahoma City's KWTV News 9. He once again went out a winner covering the Thunder's NBA title this past June, something he guaranteed would happen. And then to celebrate for his retirement, they had a parade. Well, they say it was for the Thunder, but I think we know better. Hey, Dean, thanks for joining us today. How was that parade?
It was magnificent because you don't know when they're going to be coming back again. There's a lot of excitement about the future for this organization, but you wanted to savor it this time, particularly with the timing that you just mentioned. So good to be with you, and I know I'm going to be joining Mark and Bill. Looking forward to chatting about old times.
Wonderful. Great. Hey, let's start with one of the guys on the cover of SI 50 years ago today, the starting quarterback for Oklahoma back then, guy by the name of Steve Davis. Tell us a bit about him as a player and as a person as well.
Well, I'll start by saying, God rest his soul, he was co-piloting a flight in, of all places, South Bend, Indiana, 10 years ago, crashed and died. But Steve Davis was a winner. He was not only a guy that I was following and would subsequently start after his career ended after 3 years, but Steve was a special guy. He wasn't especially gifted. He was about 5'10" and a half, 5'11", about 190, and could throw the ball pretty well, and did in a national championship game against Michigan. I noticed some stats today, but Steve is a wonderful guy. He was my roommate both on the road when we traveled then, but in real life, we had both a dorm room 111 we shared, and we also illegally shared an apartment complex together. So I go way back with Steve, and just remember a guy who was full of energy, full of life. He was a leader. He was not a prima donna, but he was a guy that took advantage of his status. Steve flew his own airplane, for example. He would fly off to different towns and cities in Oklahoma and a couple of other states on a Thursday night before we would play on Saturday and go preach. He was an ordained Baptist minister, or go speak to them. And biggest thing I think in football was, of course, he led the Sooners to 2 national championships in his 3 years starting. And in his first 3 years there, 32-1-1. Not shabby.
No. Tell me, Dean, you mentioned 12 years ago, we lose him in an accident. How devastating was that for you? And tell me what that day was like.
Oh, it was just miserable. It's one of those shake your head all day long, because we've all reached this age, this season of life that's is the fourth quarter, and his ended before he had a lot of great days in front of him. But it was paralyzing. The Oklahoma football, particularly at that time, was number 1 on the radar, 2 and 3, and there wasn't a close number 4. The Thunder wouldn't come around for another 40 years. So it was the game in town, and he was a leader and represented the state in such a good way. And on a football field, he, not having all of those physical talents of some of today's athletes, especially these dual threat quarterbacks, he relied on tremendous leadership and good decisions. And but he was good enough, when it's 3rd and 3, we like to get it to Joe Washington back then, but Steve Davis, if the situation called for it, was going to get you 3.5 yards. Just a spectacular human being.
How was he able to help you when you came in, being the young guy? Did he take you under his wing? What did he do for you?
Yeah, that's a great question, and he sure did. I was raised in Norman, Oklahoma, so I lived 3 miles from Steve growing up, and I had a pretty good high school career coming up, and he knew of me at a very young age and really sought me out. And it was hard to tell Oklahoma no, although I came close to playing for Bear Bryant and a few other things, playing basketball in college. But it was because of Steve and Barry Switzer that I ended up staying there. But yeah, taking me under his wing, no question, that happened. And thank God it did. We had, I like to think, a lot of things in common. I was a little bit more out on the boulevard than Steve might be, and he always got a kick out of that. But otherwise, we had a lot of similarities, and he really taught me the route to becoming Oklahoma's quarterback and what to look for and what to avoid.
You mentioned about almost playing for Bear Bryant. You also played for a great coach in his own right, Barry Switzer. What was it like to play for Switzer?
Yeah, I tell you, Barry Switzer is still the most misunderstood human being in the world. He had and still has. He turns 88 in October the 5th. And that guy has more energy in him than I do at this time. And you guys probably have researched and know that he has literally a memory that is just unmatched. Encyclopedic was the word I was searching for. And that came in handy for him many, many times. But I'll give you a good example of a Barry Switzer story that I didn't hear until yesterday from one of his closest friends. There's a lot of former players who tap into Coach still, and regularly every home game, and it's happened for decades now. He's got a nice place on campus that has a little bunkhouse, but it's inside the house. He hosts, get ready for this, 27 players Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. If they need help getting in, he'll fly them out. They stay at his house, and he's with them that whole time. And so there's not a fraud involved. He is the greatest people person with the greatest heart of anyone I've ever known. Barry is misunderstood, a winner, and I think the players' love and affection for him is exemplified by having that many players still come back and stay at his place every home game.
So I describe the Oklahoma Sooners that year, 1975, as the best team that no one could watch. Up until the Orange Bowl against Michigan, you were in that third season of NCAA probation, and you were banned from appearing on TV during the regular season. Did that affect the players at all in the locker room, or was it just something, hey, it's more motivation for us?
You know, Bill, Coach Switzer sold us on the idea that not being on TV was not going. He turned it around and used it as a positive, and we were finally able to be back on television for the Michigan title game, January 1 of '76. So yeah, he was able to take advantage of situations like that to hype us up. But I think that the greatest thing that Switzer did, and the greatest thing about our years there, I think it would be the love among the players and the fact that because of Switzer's sincerity, he got more out of players than any coach I ever saw. And as you guys probably know, and those that don't, you got to realize that he took over the program after being an assistant for Chuck Fairbanks, and he recruited the black athlete to Norman, Oklahoma, lot sooner than Bear Bryant, the main competition, Darrell Royal, who was a Sooner at one time, and you can go down the list. But the black athlete, the Joe Washingtons, the Leroy Selmans, the people we'll probably get into talking about, we had black athletes that fit in so comfortably with everyone else, and it all was really a byproduct of the way Coach Switzer was raised among blacks. And he has an affection for them that's like none other. And I will go to my grave in saying that I don't know of a coach that did more and continues to do more for the black athlete than Barry Switzer. And I'm selling that notion. I'm trying to express it to tell you that that's real, and that's what wins ball games, guys. Coaches can coach and they can recruit. They can draw up plays, but at the end of the day, it's the athletic ability, which we had superior ability and depth because of, in large part, recruiting the black, but also his being wide open and giving opportunities to him. I lost my starting position after being injured and in the hospital for 2 weeks to Thomas Lott, the first African-American quarterback at Oklahoma and among most schools around the country. So if it was an opportunity for Coach to motivate, he was going to do it, but it was from the heart.
You know, there seemed to be a spread the wealth motto for that team because the running game, it wasn't just Joe Washington. There were so many running backs. I mean, Sims was a freshman who actually didn't play that much, and he became an NFL star. Talk about that spread the wealth mentality that was on the Sooners team.
Well, you had to, because this is the best example. My first year as a starter, 3 deep in the wishbone, you got the quarterback, you got the fullback, and you've got 2 halfbacks. And so my first year as a starter, we didn't have one running back make it to the NFL or be drafted. We didn't have 1 or 2. All 6, 3 fullbacks, or all 9, 3 fullbacks, and 6 running backs all went to the NFL. First, second, third team. How about that?
That's unbelievable.
That's how he recruited. There's all you need to know about how they won back then and now how they're scraping to find ways to be victorious.
You mentioned, Dean, that he's misunderstood. I'm talking about Coach Switzer. The funny thing is the players that we've talked to, and you mentioned this, they all love him. And to me, I would think that would be the only thing that matters is how do his players respond to him then and now. And yet there is a controversy when it comes to Coach Switzer. He's kind of seen as this I don't know, kind of country bumpkin. But like you say, his sports knowledge, his football knowledge is second to none.
Well, I know him as well as anybody in the world, and have spent incredible amounts of time with him growing up, when he recruited me, when he started me, when he took my job away, when he went on to win the championships, when he became Dallas's head coach and won the championship there. I was in the middle of every bit of that. So you are exactly right. He brought on a lot of that, the black hat guy, but it was all about the players. How would they respond? Well, they're going to respond in a positive way on the field in terms of devotion and making sure that they do what they can do. Yeah, he did. He was brash, but he also has this other side to him that's quite special. I don't know if you guys have seen the Dallas Cowboy podcast with Jerry Jones, but if you watch that late in the series, I think it was episode 7, maybe the last one, Switzer had done good and bad down there. Jimmy Johnson got all the credit and deserved 90% of it. But at the end of the day, they went around and talked about Barry Switzer, and they said, guys, what do you remember? And in each one of those interviews, and we're talking about Michael Irvin, we're talking about not Troy Aikman, but we're talking about Emmitt Smith. We're talking about all pros, all-time players. They probably had 10 of them. And they went in depth with their love for the coach and realizing that he wasn't prepared to be an X and O NFL coach, but he did what he needed to do to win. So the devotion that he had kept us single-minded. We were focused on the task at hand, and it was through his leadership. And hey, athletes don't mind being a little cocky, right? And Coach Switzer being able to use being on probation and other things was able to sell that notion to a bunch of talented players wanting to be motivated.
Talking about the Cowboys documentary, Troy Aikman did say when he first went to Oklahoma, Switzer had his hand in everything. Every part, every position he was part of. He was a man in charge of everything. Was that true? And how great a coach was he that we maybe didn't see as you got older in terms of not knowing how great a coach he was?
Yeah, and by the way, I swore to Coach Switzer that I wouldn't tell anyone, so I'll tell you guys this since we're now buddies. So I promised him I wouldn't. There was one quarterback on the Dallas Cowboys who, after this documentary aired, who called Coach Switzer, and I'll let you finish. I'll let you kind of imagine how that conversation went. But there were regrets from one end, but it ended up in a loving situation. And I think you kind of sense what I'm talking about here. Through years and decades of being out of it, I think Troy Aikman saw that Coach Switzer did do things. It was 180 degrees different from a Jimmy Johnson, because Coach Switzer had been in Norman not coaching pro football for all those years.
It's very interesting, the whole Troy Aikman, Barry Switzer dynamic, because it was Barry who, after Troy got hurt that sophomore year, who calls up Terry Donahue and says, hey, I can't play him now because I have this other quarterback that's doing great for us, and he's such a talent. And that's how Troy ends up at UCLA. And to me, that's an incredible selfless act that Switzer did. And I don't know if it's payback thank you that UCLA beat Ohio State in 1975. That gave you the opportunity, if you beat Michigan, to win the national championship. But I still think it's a selfless act.
Bill, that's a great comment.
Oh, it's Mark. Sorry.
Mark, I'm sorry. I apologize. But anyway, Coach Switzer knew when he saw Troy Aikman go down with a leg injury against Miami, Troy was lighting it up. We weren't running the ball any in that year, but Troy was lighting it up. It was obvious that he was bringing something special to the table. You would go on and win the 1985 national championship under Jamel Holloway, but Troy Aikman would have won it his way as well. But Barry wanted to help Troy, as you just mentioned, Mark, and he did in calling Donahue, who became friends of mine in a small world. When I was calling ABC college football games. I'd be on the West Coast calling his games quite often, and he reminded me of those conversations. Terry told me a coach called him and said, Terry, I'm going to send you a first-round draft pick, Troy Aikman. And Terry kind of laughed because he knew that there was no throwing the football in Oklahoma, and he was not interested. So it was about a week later, it kind of pissed Coach Switzer off. He called him again, and he said, Herman, you have a chance to have someone here who's going to be an NFL Hall of Famer. Trust me on this. He had to twist his arm. And the rest of the story is history. But isn't it ironic, and isn't it fitting is the better word, that Troy, after all of this, and I know Troy and like him and respect him, but after all of this, he picked up that phone after that Dallas Cowboys special, called his coach, and I would have loved to have heard every bit of that conversation.
Let me go back to Switzer for a sec. I want to make sure. Did he recruit you? And if he did, what was it like when he walked in to talk to you? How much energy and how did you feel?
That is a great question, and I know your name is Bill.
It is.
Bill, Coach Switzer was irrepressible. He, for example, I'm a golfer and thought I was back there in high school. When I was a junior in high school, I was being recruited pretty hard. And Coach would come out to Westwood Golf Course there in Norman. And he would park on Robinson Highway, street, but highway. And he knew when I would be coming around. Sometimes he would call my mom and dad and find out when I teed off. This is when I'm a junior in high school. So I'm out playing after school with my buddies. And who walks out to the course in his loafers, no socks, tassels on his shoes, shorts, and just looking like a stud with all this energy, walks out there on a golf course where he's kind of reverent, right? He's got a lot of enthusiasm when he comes over and starts introducing himself to all the guys he's playing with, but he caddies for me. He caddies the back nine about 5 different occasions the next 2 years. There's an example of creative recruiting.
Wow.
That's fantastic. That is so great. Hey, in 74, you split the NCAA championship. That back then, that's what they did with USC. But you guys, as Mark mentioned, you're on probation. And you always heard those whispers, you guys didn't do this. Oklahoma didn't do that. So going into 75, a little bit of chip on your shoulder for you guys to prove how good you were?
Oh, absolutely. No question about it. Coming off that 74 season, which I think was more talented, although, and doing a little homework before our chat here, I wanted to confirm some things. The 74 team had 8 All-Americans on it. The 75 team had 8 All-Americans, 4 of whom had played in 74. So, there was a feeling of we're going to get to play on television on down the road, but let's back this thing up. Switzer was a young buck. He was just coming in. His first year as head coach was 73, and he starts out. You guys have probably seen the numbers. I think that I know my national championship ring says we'd won 29 straight. So he wasn't used to losing. And it was fuel for us to get going. We knew how good that we were in 74, but we would need to come back and fill a few holes. And in 75, that was a driving force for us to be competitive and to be able to make it through what was really a wild season.
So I wanted to go back to that question about, and it's Mark Dean, that question about UCLA beating Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. So the Orange Bowl is the last game of the day on New Year's. The Rose Bowl, I assume, was over by the time you kicked off. Did you guys realize now that you had the opening to win the national championship if you could get past Michigan?
Yeah, we did. Switzer was honest with us throughout the whole thing, throughout your whole career. He was straight up with everyone, which made him easy to play for and like. And so we knew the circumstances. And, we didn't really think we had a very good chance. I mean, Ohio State's supposed to do what Ohio State did then and does now. They should, you just assume that's going to happen. There were a couple of other games that kind of played into that as well. But yeah, and as the game went on, as we're preparing, getting ankles taped and getting ready, watching that game and then busing over to the stadium. These days, everybody have out their phones and be watching that game live, but we'd be getting those updates. And I'll be darned if that didn't happen. And for a team that was already motivated, that had superior talent, and that was already hungry, for Switzer to walk in and look up at you and say, guys, we got the luckiest break in the world. We can win the national championship if you go beat their ass. Of course, talking about a very good Michigan football team. So, yeah, it is sort of like you would envision. It was exactly like that.
Tell me what that feeling is, Dean, winning a championship.
Well, I wish I could say that I was the quarterback that did it, but in Steve's absence, I can tell you, being as close to him as anyone was, or closer at that time, and even in my role as the number 2 quarterback as a true freshman, you felt a sense of accomplishment. You felt that winning a title is so hard to do. You can have the best team and not win it, and that happens all the time. A bounce here, bounce there, and it's so difficult to do. But when you do win it, it is a feeling of satisfaction like none other. It's indescribable, and I'm not answering it very well just to prove that indescribable is what I am.
And one of those key guys on those championships was Joe Washington.
Tell
me about him. Talk about him.
Little Joe Washington, I love that guy. Gosh almighty. I'm raised in Norman. I saw little Joe come out as a freshman, painting those shoes silver. Joe was an incredible football player, underrated. You guys probably know, but to remind some folks, and they might want to look this up. In 1975, I believe it was our second game, we were playing number 17 Pittsburgh and Tony Dorsett. And our defense, led by the Selman brothers, held Tony Dorsett to 17 yards on 12 carries. He was the presumptive Heisman favorite. And little Joe scooted 19 times, and I did look some of this up today, for 166 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's what he was on the field. He was magic. Joe had a charisma that was, he didn't say a whole lot. You guys were talking before the show here about that he is kind of talkative, but really around the team, especially before the game, I would sit in front of him on the team bus driving down from Oklahoma City to the stadium to get out and go play. And old Joe would be right behind me, and he'd be rocking, and he'd be going, He'd have a hum to him that started when I got on the bus and ended when we got there. I don't know what he was thinking, but it worked. He was magic. He could run, he could pass, he could quick kick, which he did in the national championship game. He could do anything, and he did it with style. He just, the listeners out there, go back and look him up. Google and go back Facebook. Look at Joe Washington, and you will nod your head that crazy backup quarterback down there was right. He was special.
Yeah, we've gone down the rabbit hole of Joe Washington and his punt returns, and he was Barry Sanders before Barry Sanders.
Yeah. Well, he could run. He could only run 4.5, 5.40, but he could do it backwards, forwards, sideways, and he did it with style. There's just something about. I mean, painting your shoes silver should tell you something. But he wasn't a hot dog. In no way was he a hot dog. He was just a phenomenal football player, and he and the Selmans. There was a collection of talent on those teams, the 74 and 75 national championship teams, that are all timers. And I was just so lucky to be involved in it and in huddles. I remember guys coming into the first huddle, our first 3 a day, as I was a true freshman. So I come in that huddle, I look over and I see our fullback, Wayman Clark, who later would get in some trouble, and I was scared to death of him. He looked at me like he was going to kill me. And then there was little Joe Washington here. There was Tinker Owens here. There were just all these All-Americans. I'm just looking in this huddle going, is this really happening? And that's what was coming out of Oklahoma at that time. And the game hasn't changed. You have the best players, you're going to have the best chance of winning.
We are talking with Oklahoma sports broadcasting legend Dean Blevins, who has a bit of time on his hands these days after retiring from broadcasting after 41 years in the business. Dean, we're talking about the offense. The offense was a juggernaut, and it reminds me of this. I remember talking to Hall of Famer James Worthy, and he said when he got to the Lakers that he used to look forward to the games, even playoff games, because playing the Denver Nuggets was easier than practicing against Magic Johnson. I got to think there was some truth to that with you guys on the offense practicing against, you just mentioned, the Selman brothers and that defense. I mean, Saturdays must have been a lot easier for you guys than Wednesdays and Thursdays.
Well, Scott, you're exactly right. There was no doubt about it, because our backup team would have won the Big 12. They were that good. I've given you the example of one of the years that I started. I had 3 deep in the backfield, 9 running backs who played in the NFL. That kind of tells you what kind of talent that there was around there. But it all had to come together. It had to have a leader, and it had to have championship players who knew how to behave. It's kind of interesting that Coach Switzer and the program had a reputation, somewhat well-deserved, because some of the problems were very significant. But I know among that team right there, besides the Wayman Clark fullback that I mentioned, that team didn't sniff trouble. There was not a discipline problem. Coach Switzer just expected you to discipline yourself to a degree, and that philosophy seemed to work pretty well for him.
Grab your boots, it's trivia time. Past our prime, but still in our prime. Questions rolling like a tumbleweed.
Joe did the trivia question. By the way, when we had Joe Washington on the show, I had no idea. He did impersonations for us. He did Howard Cosell, John Wayne. I didn't know he had that talent.
I didn't either, and I've known him 55 years.
True or false? Barry Switzer once appeared on the TV show Coach, about a fictional college football coach, with 2 other coaching Hall of Famers. True or false?
Well, the coach being on the show is correct. Mm-hmm. Coach, I can see it right now. Well, it has to be Jimmy Johnson. Is that one?
No, but good guess. Good guess.
Lou Holtz?
No. These were successful NFL.
Okay.
NFL.
Jimmy Johnson won him 2 Super Bowls. He sure
did. And that's why Jimmy was a great answer.
Yeah. NFL. Come on. Who is it?
Okay. First of all, you were correct. It was true. George Allen and Hank Stram.
Oh, my goodness. We're going way back.
We're going to matriculate down the field, all right?
Yeah. It aired on February 13th of 1990. And it was all about a coaches conference, and Barry was there, and he was still a college coach at the time, but he was there with George Allen and Hank Stram in the episode.
I do remember seeing it now, and obviously my memory is not as good as Coach Switzer's, which I've got to give you an example of Switzer's memory. Yeah. So it's after I played, but I knew all the people involved in this story, so I know it's 100% true. Yeah. Oklahoma's in a close game, and a ball carrier comes around the corner and is headed right for Switzer, barrels him over, knocks him back up against the railing there. And as Switzer gets up, he sees a guy that he hasn't seen in 25 years. The guy said, and I know the guy, and Coach Switzer runs by him and said, "Hey, Jack, you got a cig?" He wanted a cigarette, And this is a guy he hadn't seen in 25 years, called him by name. The guy gives him a cigarette, and you may have seen some of these all-time snapshots of Coach on a knee on the sideline trying to hide that gert. But it was a perfect example of his memory and also his orneriness.
Well, Dean, let me ask, when you, maybe not as much nowadays, or maybe it's still nowadays, but how much pressure was there to play for the Sooners back when you played?
A ton of pressure. I committed to Kansas basketball, and Ted Owens in the living room said, "Great, I want you to sleep on it." And before the sun rose, somehow Barry Switzer had found out, and I was not going anywhere else but at Oklahoma. I'd grown up in Norman. I had two brothers. Both were scholarship athletes. One was a fantastic player that tore up a knee, and back then, your career's over basically. He went on and played at Arkansas, but Oklahoma was the big dog. I looked at the biggest schools in America, but couldn't separate myself from the players that I had become acquainted with. I told you Steve Davis kind of started talking to me as a sophomore and junior in high school, so there was a relationship there. And then I got to know Tinker Owens and the rest of them out on the boulevard. And so there was always that. I didn't want to go to Oklahoma because I was a throwing quarterback, dual threat, but a throwing quarterback. I knew I shouldn't go to Oklahoma because of that. And what did I do? I went to Oklahoma, won 2 national championships as a backup, started the next year, didn't lose, ended up 6-0 as a career starter, but lost my job because we were going back to just grind it out, running the football. And so the reason I knew I didn't want to go to Oklahoma, it all came to fruition, but I went there anyway. And that's because of the tradition, but it's because of the relationship with the head coach.
Right. You know, based on how we had to track you down, Dean, and pick a time that was good for you to do the show, you're obviously staying busy these 2 months since calling it quits. How's the adjustment to retirement going?
Well, the only thing I regret is not doing it a couple of years earlier. It has just been fabulous because in this job, it's been a fantastic job being in the media. But when you wake up in the morning, the way I went about it, I wanted to know everything that was going on. I didn't want to lose a story, and I didn't get it off my mind until I went to bed, which usually coming home from the local TV gig, you get in bed at 2:00. So it was a draining experience. And I'm back on the golf course healthy for the first time in 20 years, and things are going swimmingly, except for that ball I hit in the water yesterday.
Well, it's swimming in a different way.
Yeah.
Dean Blevins, a pro's pro in front of the camera, and 50 years ago, part of that incredible Sooners backfield. Thanks so much, Dean, for giving us some time to look back on that 2-time national championship team, the Oklahoma Sooners. Thanks so much, Dean.
My pleasure, Scott. Thanks, Mark, Bill. See you guys later.
You're awesome.
Thank you so much.
Okay, what about the other teams in college football as we head into the 75 season? Well, number 2 is Alabama. Winning the SEC isn't a big deal to them. They're all about winning national championships, and 50 years later, that's still the case. Going to be a little bit tougher this year, apparently. But Bill, who's number 3?
Yeah, USC. They'd only been to the Rose Bowl 7 of the past 9 years, but Pat Hayden is now gone. They're giving the reins to Vince Evans and Rob Hurdle. Oh boy, that didn't go well. They combined for the season 142 attempts, 43 completions for 132 yards. That's a 33.3% percentage. They only had 2 touchdowns and 9 interceptions, 8 by Evans. But what USC did have was a guy in the backfield that was pretty good. I think his name was Ricky Bell. Ricky Bell ran close to 1,900 yards, and he finished 3rd in the Heisman Trophy. But USC, unfortunately, struggled a little bit. They started 7-0, then they lost 4 straight, and then they came back to at least win the Liberty Bowl over Texas A&M. But it just wasn't USC's year. But they started off with the idea that Vince Evans was going to just follow right in Pat Hayden's footsteps.
Mm. And think of that. They had that dominant run under McKay.
Yep.
But they win a national championship in 78. And then they go 25 years before winning another one in 03. They win back-to-back ones in 03 and 04. And they have not won one since.
Nope.
So
not even been close.
Right? Not really, no. SC fans not liking that. At number 4, Mark, who's at number 4?
It is Michigan. And what really made that season interesting for Michigan is they had a tie in their two of their first 3 games. They tied Stanford 19-19. They tied Baylor 14-14. So they started the year 1-0-2. They had more ties than wins and losses combined. And they would end up starting the year 8-0-2. They didn't lose their first game till they played Ohio State. And then, of course, they lose to Oklahoma in the Orange Bowl. But kind of a weird season there.
Well, that's what happens when you hire a baseball general manager to be your
football
coach.
Yes.
That's right. Bo Schembechler, Mr. Tiger.
Number 5 is Nebraska. Number 6, Auburn. Rounding out the top 10, Archie Griffin and Ohio State at 7. Penn State at 8, Arizona is 9, and Texas is 10. So Arizona is in the top 10 and in the Pac-8, but noticeably missing from the top 25 is its rival from the WAC conference, ASU. Billy, tell me about the Sun Devils from 1975.
Okay, we have to go back a little bit. Back in 74, ASU finished 7-5, so there wasn't high expectations for them. Mind you, from 1970 to 73, ASU went 43-4 and won 4 straight Fiesta Bowls. But they were going 1974 into 75 saying ASU's not going to be that good. They played all right in the WAC. They went 12-0, coached by, I don't want to say legendary, but obviously a great coach in Frank Kush. Yeah, 12-0, finished number 2 in the polls at the end of the year, and they had a few key players: Bruce Hardy, Mike Haynes, an NFL also Hall of Famer, J.J. Jefferson. So it's odd that ASU that they were so dominant in the WAC, but they had one bad year, and then the next year was like, okay, they're going to be bad again, and they proved that wasn't correct.
Yeah. Mark, anything else jump out at you heading into the 75 college football season?
Well, the 17th ranked team in the country is UCLA, and they got John Shara at quarterback, and their head coach Dick Vermeil, and this would end up being Vermeil's second and last year at UCLA. Then becomes the Eagles head coach, which opens the door for Terry Donahue, the assistant coach on the team, to become their head coach for decades. But what was so interesting about that UCLA team is they played Ohio State at the Coliseum early in the season and lost by 21. And then they meet them again in the Rose Bowl, and everyone expects another beatdown. Instead, UCLA upsets Ohio State in that Rose Bowl game, which allows then Oklahoma to win the national championship.
Interesting.
Wow.
Is it pretty fair to say, Mark, that Donahue's the best head football coach in Bruins history?
I would say his longevity, but some people would say Red Sanders, because UCLA won a national championship under him. He in the 50s, UCLA was a powerhouse under Red Sanders. And then Red died in a hotel room with a woman of ill repute. Well, a woman of the night. What do we want to call about it? He had a heart attack while in bed with her.
Elvira?
Yeah, that's right. It was Mistress of the Night.
Anything else from football jump out at you, Billy?
No.
All right.
Cal State Fullerton wasn't ranked, so.
Who?
Cal State Fullerton was not ranked, and I say you go to hell on that one.
Let's move on to the final few weeks of the baseball season, and look who's back. Nolan Ryan. June 1st, 1975, he threw the 4th no-hitter of his career. A week later, he won again to get to 10-3, and then he lost his next 8 decisions. Clearly, he was unhealthy, but now he's just won 4 of his last 5 decisions. So he's 14-12, including a win at Shea Stadium, back where it all started for the Express with a win over the Yankees. That win in New York would be the last start of the season for Nolan Ryan. So an up and down season for a guy who the couple years prior was striking out 300 batters a game a season. I think he had 383 the year before. Not this year. A different version of him. He wasn't
Oh,
striking
oh
guys
yeah.
out.
His career is over, man. He'll never be a success
No,
anywhere else.
They
no.
said he had a back injury, tricep injury, and a groin injury, and he still went out and pitched.
Yeah. He's
Still,
tough.
I mean, he gave up 50 in his the 8 straight losses, 51 runs in 56.2 innings.
Ooh, that's a
You
nice
know, but I'm
array.
saying, but I'm saying the fact that he pitched with all those injuries and didn't hurt his arm.
Right.
Right?
Because you use your
Yeah.
legs. I think he was a
Yeah,
proponent of
yeah.
using his legs. He has
Amazing.
really strong legs and the strides he took. But did you read the last paragraph in that article?
Mm,
It
I did.
somehow seems fitting that Nolan Ryan should complete his peril-fraught season in a TV soap opera. He is making
That's
a
right.
cameo appearance this week in Ryan's Hope,
That's
which we
right.
talked about, remember?
You
Yes.
did. That was a trivia question, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah. He
The
three
link to
episodes he did.
Ullman.
Yep.
It's funny. He would only pitch 20 more years.
How many more no-hitters?
And he struggled too. He
Yeah.
struggled every start.
He struggled to that until that very last game. He struggled.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
geez. Too funny. Elsewhere in baseball, Mark, your crappy Tigers are sucking again, aren't they?
Yeah, they've lost 5 in a row. But Tiger fans are used to it. We lost 19 in a row. Only once, though, did they break loose. They erupted for 8 runs in one inning and beat this other team 9-2. Bill, who was that other team?
I think you know it's the Angels. It's always the Angels.
This was
Who did
Was
they
it
just,
snap their
Ray
19
Bear again?
Who did
think
they
they-
snap their 19-game losing streak against?
The Angels, because Ray Bear tossed a 2-hitter.
Yep, yep, yep.
they lost. The Angels lost despite the fact that Dave Chalk went 1 for 4.
I hate him. Him and Jeff Mathis. Oh, man, I can't do it.
You want to get Billy going?
Yeah.
Talk about Jeff Mathis.
Oh, for the love of God, show me his highlight reel. Strike 3 call. God.
Oh,
Yeah, trade Mike Napoli. That's smart.
Billy, you got anything from that week?
Yeah, I'll make this one quick. Mike Torres is a native of Kansas, the sunflower state, obviously.
Sorry about
And it's
that.
fitting that he likes to eat sunflower seeds. But when he tosses the little sunflower husks onto the artificial turf in KC, it pisses off the groundskeeper who must pick them up by hand because his vacuum cleaner can't do the job. I think he's still picking them up today.
If he throws a complete game, got to be going to a bag and a half, 2 bags. I mean, that would take him forever to pick.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Not to mention, it's kind of gross.
He's still picking them up. He's still picking them up today. I mean, for the love of God. I mean, by hand.
Just right for Friday night. Now, one of the more famous things Nolan Ryan ever did was when Robin Ventura charged the mound. Not sure if that was on a Friday night or not, but Friday night fights are back on TV, and Don Dunphy as the host has been in front of some of the greatest names in boxing history on Friday nights, coming into the living rooms in America every week. Billy, I mean, this is a Mount Rushmore of of boxing greats.
Yeah, just think if you were to go on a Friday night and say, let's watch boxing, and you get Jake LaMotta, Joe Louis, Rocky Marciano, Carmen Basilio, and Sugar Ray Robinson on certain nights, for the love of God, that'd be pay-per-view $59. Unbelievable. Friday night with those fighters. Dang.
And there was a time when boxing reigned supreme in this
It did.
country. When Dunphy first spoke up on television, there were about 135,000 TV sets in the country. In 1975, there are more than 100 million. So,
What do you think it is now?
oh God,
Billion?
yeah, probably, right?
Dang.
But I mean, who doesn't? And that doesn't count laptops and all
Yes,
that
yeah,
stuff we
phones.
watch, right? When asked who was the best of them all, including the heavyweights, he said, "It is hard for me to separate Joe Louis from Rocky Marciano as the best heavyweights, and there would be times when Muhammad Ali might be able to stay away from both long enough to finally get to them. Other times, they would get him. Overall, I'd say Marciano was the
Wow.
best, but anyone can argue it. Marciano
Never
certainly
lost.
one of the
Never
greatest
lost,
that
yeah.
never lost, right? Never lost a fight, but many think that that was a down time for the heavyweights, but can't argue with his record, that's for sure.
Nope.
We're getting towards the end here, and we're going to talk a little bit about, we mentioned him briefly earlier. He's on the preseason rank number 7 Ohio State Buckeyes. Good man in the long run. He's rushed for over 3,800 yards in his college career. He was the Heisman Trophy winner in 74, and he's the favorite to do it again here in 75. I'm talking about Archie Griffin of the Ohio State University, a great football player. By all accounts, an even better person. I mean, how about this, guys? He makes his bed when he stays in a hotel. I mean, that is that's up there. That is
My mom would be so proud of him.
right.
She always made sure my sister and I made our beds, not just made our beds, used hospital corners,
Oh,
so it's
yeah.
all neat, You couldn't
Wow.
sloppily put your bed together.
Billy is a big make your bed guy,
I am. I
Um,
am.
but
You
at
make
hotel,
Callie do hospital corners?
She won't do. Well, we're still trying to get her to make the bed, but we have a disagreement on why she's doing it.
do you make your bed when you stay at a hotel?
I have before, yes. I'm sorry, I have. I've gotten up and thought, oh, it's all right. Yeah. Yeah.
Too funny.
Because
Griffin's
it's a
just
habit. It's habit.
yes. Yes. Well, you also wake up at 4:30 in the
I
morning.
do. I do. I wake up early and think, I got nothing to do. I'll make
Right.
the bed.
Griffin's just the 5th junior to win the Heisman and the first since Roger Staubach at Navy in 63, but nobody has ever won it twice. Griffin's about to change that. He is going to become the first and only to win the Heisman Trophy twice. And while he may be the best college player in the nation, he's not even the best athlete in his family. He's one of 7. And for every accomplishment Archie has done, he has a brother or a sister who has one-upped him. I mean, how about this? Archie is a God-fearing Christian, and yet his brother Daryl was voted the 1975 Ohio Christian Athlete of the Year. So they said that like their trophy room was just like ridiculous between all the things that the kids had accomplished. And one last thing when it comes to Archie, they list him at 5'9", 180 pounds. I never knew that. I never knew that he was not a big, bulky
Yeah,
running
neither
back.
did I.
I always thought he was, but they say he's probably not even that big, and he has a 31-inch waist. So
Right.
Well, if you're smaller, you can hide behind the lineman. It's actually a benefit.
In college.
exactly, we were talking earlier before we started that it's possible that the reason he was not as effective in the NFL, which he clearly wasn't, little guys don't last long in the NFL. They
Yeah,
take
he
a
had close to
pounding.
1,000 touches in college.
Say again?
He had close to he had 870 touches in college alone in 4 years. So
Yeah.
all of a sudden you're going into the NFL, you're not that big a guy to begin with. In a lot of ways, he could have been out of gas a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And then, you start getting hit by by these big 260-pound guys back then. Now they're 360 pounds, but
But they're all guys that are now the best of the best. At college, you might be able to get past a guy that might be an accountant down the road. But in the NFL, these are guys that are playing for their lives, playing for their jobs.
yep.
And he also got but he did get to play with his brother Ray with the Bengals, who was a defensive back. That must have been nice. And Ray had a pretty decent career as well.
Yeah, I remember him being on the Bengals, and I was just always shocked that he was not as good anymore. He was like the first college player
Yep.
I could remember. Like, I thought if you won the Heisman Trophy, that meant for sure that you were going to then be great
Yep.
in the pros like OJ was, but that was not the case always.
Yeah, Griffin only ran over 100 yards 3 times in the NFL. Was it 7-year career?
Yeah.
Yeah, only 3 times. But you think in college, he ran over 100 yards 34 times, including the NCAA record 31 straight between his sophomore and senior years. So such a difference between college and pros for Archie Griffin. Still
Yeah.
didn't make him. He's still a wonderful man.
Yeah, supposedly just a great, great guy.
Yeah.
All right, let's go. Down the stretch we go, Mr. Dave Johnson.
And down the stretch they come.
For the record, Mark.
I've got Dave Bing, the veteran point guard of the Detroit Pistons, is no longer a Piston. After 9 seasons in Motown, he is traded to the Washington Bullets for guard Kevin Porter. And he would end up playing 2 seasons with the Bullets. But the interesting thing about Dave Bing is later in life, he became the 74th mayor of the city of Detroit.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. But Dave Bing was 7-time All-Star. He was my first favorite player in the NBA. For some reason, I don't know if it's a Tigers fan or what, but I just loved Dave Bing. Him and Earl the Pearl Monroe were my 2 favorite players when I first started following the NBA.
And Porter was a good little player back then.
He was, yeah.
I love these kind of stories. Back in the day, the NHL Boston Bruins and Boston Garden are sold by the Slorer Broadcasting Corporation to Sports Systems, a Buffalo corporation, for an estimated $10 million. That was to the Jacobs family. They are still the owners of the Bruins 50 years later and the Garden. You know what it's worth now?
How much?
2.7 billion.
Wow.
That's always crazy to see a team 10 million to 2.7 billion dollars in 50 years. That's quite a return on your investment. Billy.
Okay, in London, New Zealand's John Walker, he's the world record holder in the mile. He won his specialty in 3:53.62. He wasn't done, though. The day after the London run, he went over to Gothenburg, Sweden, where he won his rarely contested 2,000-meter run at 4:56.8, failing to break the world record by 0.6 of a second. And John Walker's a pretty good runner.
Yeah, I swear to you, I find it kind of interesting that a year and a half ago when we started this, I knew some, I knew like the names Frank Shorter, Marty the Quarry,
Yep.
Steve Prefontaine, that kind of stuff. But now we're like really getting to like know them. I find it kind of interesting.
Yeah. How talented they truly were back then. And I never paid attention because I didn't care much about track and field. And now I do care about it.
Yeah. Track and field and swimming have both kind of like opened my eyes. Faces in the crowd, Billy.
Okay, Gerald Coleman. He won the junior sailing championship when he was a kid. Well, he went on to become a member of the U.S. sailing team and alternate to the U.S. Olympic team in 1996. And he also was elected to the College Sailing Hall of Fame. Pretty impressive kid there.
Yeah. These faces in the crowd, guys, you just never know. They're just like this unknown kid like this guy. I got one. James Hartung, 15, of Omaha, Nebraska. He won the side horse, the parallel bars, and vaulting events to take the overall championships in the senior boys gymnastic competition. He's from, like I said, from Omaha, Nebraska. 9 years later, he would be part of the U.S. team that took home the team gold at the 1984 Summer Olympics in Los Angeles. So, some little 15-year-old kid who's bouncing around doing gymnastics, and 9 years later, Mitch Gaylord, I think, was on that team, and Bart Connor and Peter Vidmar. I mean, it was just a great U.S. gymnastics team, and I saw that name, and I was like, I think I know that name. Mark.
Well, earlier Bill was talking about John Walker, and for the record. So in Faces of the Crowd, I want to talk about Bill Walker.
Yes.
He's 38 years old. He's a truck driver from Detroit, and he set an American record, 8 hours, 37 minutes, 57.5 seconds in the 50-mile walk. Ooh. The old mark was 8:47:17. So, and I think it's pretty funny that a champion type walker's last name would be Walker.
Yes.
Destined to walk in greatness.
That's like my favorite pitcher's name, Grant Balfour.
That was a great name, yeah. He had a good season or two with Oakland, didn't he?
He did, yeah.
He had a really great intro song or something.
Oh my God, the place would go
nuts. Yeah.
Bonkers. Yep. Hey, let's finish up. 19th hole, Billy.
Okay, you'll know this guy when I say who wrote this, but in the August, this is from Donald Dell. I think we did a little bit of story on him a week or so ago. But he says the August 25th issue of SI stated that I was party to an agreement that prohibited Jimmy Connors from entering the 1974 French National Championship tournament. That statement is totally false and has absolutely no basis in fact. I was not party to any such agreement. Indeed, prior to the French tournament, the Grand Prix committee adopted, at my specific urging, and in the presence of the French tournament director, a resolution condemning bans against players. That's Donald L. Dell from Washington, D.C. And Scott, did SI say anything about this?
You tell me, but I'm pretty sure that they argued vehemently against what Dell
Yes,
said.
they came out and said Mr. Dell is entirely correct. SI regrets this error. Sorry.
Or as Billy likes to say, my bad.
My bad. That would have been better. Mr. Dell is entirely correct. My bad. Oh, boy.
All right. Nothing else for me. That's going to do it for this week. Dean Blevins, thanks for joining us to talk about that great Sooners team of 1975. Hope you enjoy your retirement, my good friend. Won't be the last time we hear from that team, that's for sure. I'm sure we'll be talking about that Sooners team going forward as we head towards the holidays. For Mark and Bill, I'm Scott. We're done. We're past our prime.